So somebody dropped two words on our request board: Hyperledger versus RIZE. That was the entire post. No context, no link. And it came from Trinet Elion55, one of the sharpest voices in that community. Now, there are a few projects called RIZE, so I asked which one. And a day later, she came back with 4 words that changed the whole video. Quote, "RIZE that's on Canton Network. Yeah." And that's when this stopped being a comparison and turned into something stranger. Because when you pull the primary documents, Hyperledger and Canton are not rivals at all. They share a name. They shared a code repository. And right now, they share the same chairwoman of the board. So let's find out what RIZE actually is, and how a 12-person firm in Montreal ended up at a table with Euroclear and Goldman Sachs. And look, this video only exists because somebody asked for it in our Discord, the Motion Room. There's an early access channel in there where every video drops before it goes public, and a request board where you just post a project name. Come make it yours. We're all learning this together. And if you'd rather read, the newsletter goes out every Friday. 1 email, sourced, no hype. Links are in the description. So first, who is RIZE? And the honest answer is that RIZE is not a blockchain, which is the single most common mistake people make about it. The legal entity is T-RIZE Group Corporation, and you can pull that straight off Canada's Federal Corporations Register. Incorporated the 31st of August 2022, registered office in downtown Montreal, status active. The founder is Madani Bukalba, and before this, he spent 13 years as a senior trader at the Caisse de dépôt et placement du Québec, Quebec's giant institutional investor. So this is a trading floor company, not a crypto company. And it's small, right? The public team page lists about a dozen people. What do they sell? They're careful about it, genuinely careful, because their own disclaimer says it out loud. Quote, "T-RIZE does not act as a broker-dealer, investment advisor, custodian, underwriter, exchange, or distributor." So they're the structuring layer, and every regulated act runs through somebody who holds a license. One more thing, because it trips up nearly every write-up out there. The RIZE token and the Canton work are 2 different things on 2 different rails. The token is an ERC20 living on Base, and Rizenet, their own permission chain built on Avalanche infrastructure, has been a testnet since March of 2024. So when somebody tells you RIZE runs on Canton, that's not quite it. Okay, this is the part that made me sit up. I pulled the Canton Foundation's own About page on the 12th of August. The foundation splits members into 3 tiers, and the top one, Premier, has 19 logos in it. BNP Paribas, BNY, DTCC, Euroclear, Goldman Sachs, HSBC, TradeWeb, and sitting right there between SBI Digital Asset Holdings and TradeWeb, T-RIZE Group, a firm incorporated 4 years ago with about a dozen people in the same tier as Euroclear and DTCC. And it goes further. That same page carries a board list, 19 people, and position 14 is Madani Bukalba. Position 2 is Yuval Ruse, Chief Executive of Digital Asset, the company that builds Canton. Also on it, John O'Neill, who runs digital assets at HSBC, and Dr. Jonna Powell from DTCC. So the founder of a Montreal startup sits on a board with people who run settlement for a good chunk of the planet. Now I want to be precise, because this is where everyone else will overclaim. T-RIZE is not a super validator. Super validators are the nodes that actually run Canton's global synchronizer and vote on protocol changes, and it takes a 2/3 majority to pass anything. That same day, the foundation showed 55 super validator nodes and 685 validators in total, and T-RIZE is not on that list. So a board seat and a protocol vote are 2 different levers. Arguably, the board seat is the higher one, but they are not the same thing. Right, a seat at the table is one thing, What have they actually put into production? So I went looking for something better than a press release. T-RIZE files its Canton featured app declaration in a public GitHub repository under a governance proposal called CIP 47. And the file says, in their own words, Canton Network Environment, mainnet, application operational status, production. Then there's the big one, a private credit program of up to $500 million issued through a UK special purpose vehicle called Kairos Litigation Limited, which you can look up at Companies House, incorporated the 9th of February this year. The first $50 million tranche opened on the 12th of May through a regulated broker-dealer, and what sits underneath it is genuinely interesting. UK litigation finance receivables, motor finance mis-selling claims, expected to fall under the FCA's redress scheme. There's also an independent pre-issuance assessment from a firm called Particula, rating it B+ in March. And I have to draw a line under that because it matters. Particula's own page says the analysis does not constitute a rating as defined in the EU's rating regulation. So it's an independent review, a real one, but it is not Moody's. What I respect is that the same review lists its own constraints, and one of them is, quote, limited ecosystem maturity and adoption-related complexity of the Canton Network. Now the honest counterweight. You'll see a $2 billion figure attached to T-RIZE. That is a pipeline of signed memoranda of understanding, not assets tokenized. Their own release last August put the live number at over 23 million. Okay, now the other half of the question, and this is the part I did not see coming. Because the honest answer to Hyperledger versus RIZE is that the two sides of it are family. Go back to June of 2015. Digital Asset, then run by Blythe Masters, buys a small San Francisco startup, and the startup's name is Hyperledger. Then, on the 9th of February 2016, the Linux Foundation writes it down in black and white. Quote, Digital Asset has donated the trademark for the Hyperledger name to the Linux Foundation. So the word Hyperledger was a gift from the company that would go on to build Canton. And around that same time, Digital Asset published a post describing a ledger where transaction processors could validate a transfer without knowing the counterparties involved, how much was moving, or what asset it was denominated in. That is Canton's privacy model, written down years before Canton shipped. Then it goes one more layer. On the 1st of July, 2024, the Linux Foundation announced the Global Synchronizer Foundation, and the release says this, quote, a new lab called Splice has been formed in the Hyperledger Foundation to provide open source governance for the code utilized by the Global Synchronizer nodes. Splice is the software that runs Canton's Global Synchronizer. It started life as a Hyperledger lab. Today that repository has moved out, and Canton's current documentation doesn't mention any of it. And then the detail that ties the bow. Dr. Jonna Powell of DTCC on Canton's own About page, quote, serves as the chair of the board for both Canton Foundation and Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust. One person, both boards. So Trinity Lion 55, when you told me you thought the Linux Foundation was behind some of this, you were reaching for something real. So if they're family, what's the actual difference? And which would a serious institution pick? Here's the cleanest way I can put it. Hyperledger is a workshop. Canton is a market. Hyperledger, now called LF Decentralized Trust, ships open source toolkits under the Apache license. You run them on your own machines and govern your own network. No token, no shared mainnet, by design. And it is not standing still, which is the bit most comparison videos miss. Paladin, which brings programmable privacy to ordinary Ethereum chains, hit version 1.0 in June, and Fabric X is described by the Foundation itself as built for stablecoins, tokenized bonds, and securities. Canton is the opposite shape. One live network, privacy baked into the protocol, and their own developer docs explain it better than I could. There's a little table on the privacy page. Alice sees her payment to Bob, but she does not see Bob's payment to Charlie, or even that Charlie exists. Charlie sees his receipt, but not where the money came from. And underneath it, one line, quote, "The synchronizer sees none of this." That is what T-RIZE is buying. And it's exactly the thing our requester called years ago, when she said privacy for institutions would eventually have to come into play. But there's a toll gate. Getting onto Canton mainnet needs committee approval, a sponsor, and your server's address on an allow list. And Canton's own docs warn that your validator is the one entity that sees all of your party's data. So the decision rule is simple. Is your list of counterparties closed or open? If you already know everyone you'll ever settle with, build it yourself in the workshop and owe nobody a vote. If you need to settle against an asset issued by somebody you haven't met yet, you need the market. And on the AI piece, since it's in RIZE's pitch, the research is real. There's an industrial research chair at ETS in Montreal, funded with over 3 million Canadian dollars from my tax and Canada's National Science Council. But their own product copy says risk assessment can also be supported by federated learning. Can be. That's a capability, not a shipped product. So, Hyperledger versus RIZE. They were never rivals. One built the workshop and gave away the name, the other built the market. And RIZE is a small Montreal firm that walked into that market and took a seat at the top table, with real production code on mainnet, a real credit deal with a real UK issuer behind it, and a marketing pipeline running a long way ahead of what's actually live. All three are true at once. And here's what you can go do with that, none of which costs anything. Canton's governance is a public GitHub repository, over 100 numbered proposals with their statuses and their votes, and their development fund takes proposals by pull request from, quite literally, anyone. On the Hyperledger side, the technical committee publishes its minutes every week, and there are open first issue tickets sitting there right now. One correction while we're here, because it'll save you an afternoon. Most of the old free Hyperledger courses are gone. The Fabric Developer course now redirects to an inactive page. The free edX course is still there to audit. And the thing I'd watch next, whether that $50 million tranche actually closes. It's public, it's checkable, which is the whole point. Trinity Lion 55. Thank you for this one. 2 words on a board turned into the best rabbit hole we've had in weeks, and your hunch about the Linux Foundation was pointing at something genuinely real. If you want your project measured next, the Motion Room is linked below. Post the name on the request board, and I'll track it from logged all the way to shipped. The newsletter goes out every Friday, 1 email, every number traced to a primary source. And if you got something out of this, a like genuinely helps other people find it. Thanks for watching.